Shalom, shalom, shalom. Shabbat shalom. It will be for a little bit longer. The sun hasn't gone down. Sorry about the motorcycle. This person's lost. They've gone in circles like 3 times already. Well, I'm back from working with the covens. They asked for my help to deal with something that they couldn't deal with. And that they ran into a person who was trying to become part of them that was a self-proclaimed black wizard. A warlock, to say the least. Because he claimed he's a warlock. Now, for those that don't know and don't have experience in that life, I'll try to explain it. A black wizard in this aspect is a person using demonic magic. Right? And he's a warlock, which means he broke his oath to some deity or some group or something. That's the way you can be a warlock. A warlock is not something like, oh yeah, I'm going to be a warlock. No. It means that a magical community has marked you, locked you out, and excluded you from that community. Hence the word warlock. Now I can go into the true etymology of the name, but I don't see the point. So we dealt with the individual in question. It turns out he's just crazy. And I don't take care of crazy. So he was not a threat to anybody, except to probably himself. And thus I wasn't needed. But if he was the other, a person actively working in demonic magic, I would have to shut him down. That is the only rare occasions that the covens around there would ask for my help, still being a coven. And otherwise they wouldn't do it. So, before I respond to the real reason of this video, I'm going to read this as best as I can. 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 1 through 4. The elders who are among you I exalt. I who am a fellow elder and a witness to the sufferings of Christ, and also a partaker of the glory that will be revealed. The shepherd the flock of God which is among you, serving as overseers, not by compulsion, but willingly, not for dishonest gain, but eagerly, nor as being lords over those entrusted to you, but being examples to the flock. And when the chief shepherd appears, you will receive a crown of glory that doesn't fade away. It would seem during my absence dealing with the covenant's problem, which thankfully I didn't have to deal with. Well, there's not much in it than what I did. I seem to have been engulfed into a drama in which I actually had no part in. From what I understand, and I'm sure videos have gone up and down and all that stuff, so I don't have a good feel for the whole thing, is that, well, Bob said something to somebody, and somebody else didn't like it for whatever reason. Okay. No reason to start a drama over it. But it continued to where somebody used the Ruach HaKodesh as the authority. Okay. Then after that, there was a video put up that says, no, we wasn't talking about Bob. We were talking about Lee. That's me. That's why I'm answering. What happened was, back in September, I went and saw George up in Nehemiah. I was asked by Isa Christ, and I use Isa Christ mostly for the honor of my wife, if she accepts that title or not. Yahshua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ, if you will. That I was to ask him the question, what can I do to help you? Now, I didn't know why I was asking the question. I was just told to ask it. And I told George I was told to ask. And I asked it like 20 times, trying to get him to answer it. Because I knew the answer wasn't given. I kept hearing, no, Lee, there's nothing you do for me. I'm all good. I'm good. I'm fine. There's nothing you do to help me. Within 2 months after that, this takes us to around November, there's a little individual that runs around YouTube, and his real name is Sam. And everybody knows his name is Sam. And he does these little childish videos, and he attacks atheists and anybody else who doesn't share his agreement or is in his little clique. Now, Sam is a person who is an unsaved heathen. Can't be Christian. Why? Well, refer to my series. A person whom is Christian is a disciple of Christ. Now, I know videos wasn't out during the time Christ was here. They just wasn't around. But do you see in any walk of Christ, in any of the 4 major Gospels, where he went around doing mockeries? Sam's not saved. You can tell it by the fruit of his being. He's not saved. So, George was threatening this poor woman who was fighting against all this. And she was in tears for like a week, man. And that's what I kept seeing every single day. And I said, I wish you guys would work this out. I wish you guys would work this out. Well, I finally got my fill of the whole thing. Because up to that point, George was threatening to kill himself. He was putting his friend ahead of the church, whom he is supposed to be a shepherd of. And all along, putting pressure on a member of his congregation. Because everybody was telling George, there's a problem with this guy. He's not acting Christian. He's really not Christian. But George took his friend and placed his friend before the church. So, going back to this, nor as being lords over those entrusted to you, but being examples to the flock. He failed. This passage right here is a passage for pastors. So, I did a video keyed to instill a response in a way that I knew a response would come. You can't talk reason to somebody who won't listen. You can't talk anything to somebody who's deaf and will not hear. And I had 2 people. One was Bruce, and Bruce had issues with George. Now, there's some history between the 2, but it doesn't involve me personally. My problem with Bruce at the time was, if George isn't going to listen to you, stop whining about it and walk away. He's not listening to you. He's not talking with you. He doesn't seem to want to work it out with you. Walk away from him. Stop getting yourself, into a twisted knot about it, It's just not worth it. All it's going to do is just, turn your guts into knots, and, it's just going to give you ulcers and just a whole bad deal, My response to George was actually this. As George was putting his heathen friend before the church and tormenting everybody else to accept his friend or be gone, George was in the wrong. And now George does not act with authority of a pastor. It's broken. Now, can George still be a pastor? Yes, he technically can. I mean, George is human, as we all are. Every human will make a mistake. Right? So we all do, every day. So, what I did is I cussed both of them out. And trust me, I can cuss a whole lot better than I did. I was just so angry I couldn't get the words out that I really wanted. And I also knew by doing that would instill a response. So what did I do? I did the video, actually in a Baptist church parking lot. I went home, edited it, put it up, and logged out of YouTube for a week. I didn't go there. I didn't look at anything. I kept completely away from it, hoping that these people would work it out. Because I put my 2 cents in. Because that's what I kept seeing every day. A woman crying, into complete tears every single day. And I just had my fill of it. So, I cussed both of them out. Mostly George. Because he was in a position of authority. And he was in the wrong. Now, there's passages in the Bible that says, well, if your brother's doing wrong or something along those lines, you take it private and you discuss it. This was already public. There was no private to it anymore. The whole private concept was done for. Everybody knew about it. So there was no need to take it private anymore. It was public knowledge now. It was out in the public eyes, and the public knew about it. So there was no private involved. So I come back after a week. I did what I said. I was going to put it up and take it down in a week, and I wouldn't look at it. And I didn't. As soon as I logged into YouTube, I went to that video, I marked it, and I did private. Never opened it. Never looked at it. I saw the views. I saw the hits. I saw there was a numerous amount of remarks, but I never reviewed one of them. The only one I saw was sitting in my inbox on YouTube, and that was from Sarai. And I don't remember what it was, but it was like a sentence long. It's really nothing. And other than that, I don't know what happened. I know I was still angry with George. He asked Barbara to come and speak. And I was going to go listen to what she had to say, and I was going to walk out. But George got a little selfish or childish or whatever you want to call it, and he put a block on it. So I never heard it. Now, she did record it, and I did watch the recording, but I wasn't present. So, in all honesty, George is not a pastor anymore, in my eyes. Because he put his friend ahead of the church. He's only shepherd of the church. The church belongs to Jesus Christ. It's not... The church in itself belongs to Jesus Christ. As far as how the legal stuff works. Technically speaking, and I know there's other documents that say it's not, but George bought the place and made the Nehemiah Center separate. Through legalities. Through the worldly ways of the court. But in truth and honesty, George bought that place. So it's his church. That he is supposed to be an overseer of, a shepherd of. And he's supposed to put then God first, then his congregation, and then it goes to all the other stuff. But George doesn't do that. So in my eyes, George is no longer a pastor. And I won't have anything to do with George as a pastor. But George is still my friend. I don't agree with George right now. I'm actually against George right now. George is still my friend. I still see him as a friend. I just don't agree with him. Okay? Now, in that video, I used cuss words, okay, to instill a response. And that's what a lot of Americans don't understand, because most Americans really don't know the English language very well. Now, cuss is to do a reprisal with derogatory terms. Okay? To cuss somebody out. That is to do a reprisal against somebody using derogatory terms. To curse somebody is to wish them ill will. It is to pray for ill will. It is to issue a spell for ill will. It is to do whatever else. But basically, you want that person harmed. Cuss, curse, not the same thing. In the Hebrew language, there are no cuss words. But you can cuss in Hebrew. You just got to be really smart about it. But most people will either go to other languages, like Greek or Latin during that time. And they would use those languages because there was more meaning to them. But actually in Hebrew, there is no curse word. You can say something like your mother was a pig, or your father is a jackass, or something like that. A donkey. I don't think they got jackasses then. But donkey, or just some derogatory term. You could do that. But you couldn't, use these other words. So I use those words to instill a response in order to get these people to wake up. It was a chosen, calculated choice. But yes, I was angry. I actually, as a young man, had a lot of anger in my life. And there's reasons for that anger, but not for people on YouTube to know. The only person I would share that with is a person that I call my wife. I'll get to her in a bit. So, it seems 6 months later, like I said, that Barbara said the Ruach HaKodesh told Bob not to cuss. Okay. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm not saying it did happen. But I'm going to say that the Ruach HaKodesh, if he chose to tell Bob this, then the Ruach HaKodesh would have told Bob this. But let's just take a wild trend and say that Bob ignored the Ruach HaKodesh. However, right? It's not for anybody else to say. If a person does something that a person is viewing the laws views as a sin, that's between that person and their maker. Bob is not a professed Christian. So he doesn't fall within any type of church-based doctrine that you might employ. He stands outside of the church by his choice. So, just should have walked away from Bob, right? Shouldn't have said a word, just saying, I don't approve this language. I prefer not to hear it. I'm leaving because of this. No ill will or hate or whatever. I just don't want to hear this. And that didn't it. Let it go at that. And then you're done. He didn't go there. What seemed to have happened is that video came down, as I understand. Another video went up saying, I apologize, I mean, you got out of line or something along those lines. I don't, like I said, I haven't viewed these videos. And it was Lee I was talking about. Meaning me getting mad at George and Bruce. Because both of them are friends in my mind. I care for both of them almost as much as I care for Sarai. And Sarai is very high on my list. The only person that stands before Sarai is Jesus Christ. even myself is a distant third when it comes to Sarai. But like I said, I'll get to her in a bit. So, I'm to blame for you to make a remark against Bob, and then you have to recant and say it's my fault. Okay. Now, in your comment to me was that I should have spoken to you because you were under more duress than I may know, which is probably true, and that I could have called her PM. I didn't need to. Didn't need to do that, Barbara. George was my pastor. I acted on my own authority. And my authority comes from Isa. George is in the wrong. George is still in the wrong. But George is still my friend. I still care quite deeply for George. I care quite deeply for Bruce. Now, Bruce has told me some things recently that I never knew. And now I can understand why he got mad at me once. I didn't know this. So, I can honestly say that I apologize to Bruce for saying the things I said in all love and humor, that Bruce took it as bad. Because I didn't know. Honestly, I didn't know. So, Barbara, if you had problems with what I did 6 months ago, why are you doing a video now? Why didn't you PM me? Why didn't you ask me to call you? Why didn't you try to call me? I know you had my phone number. I gave it to you. At that time. You could have called me, said, money's tight, I can't, do this for long. And I'd say, fine, I have your number, I'll call you back. You know what? But you didn't. So, using the comment you used to me, I reversed the comment back to you. Why didn't you address me then? At that time? Why did you wait 6 months later, and after saying something about Bob this and Bob that, and I apologize, it's about Lee? See what I'm saying? To use an old acronym, well, actually not an acronym, using an old analogy, you got your hand caught in the cookie jar. But I still don't hate you. I'm not angry with you. I would just prefer, if you want to bring me into something, that you have a good reason, or you at least challenge me if you can privately. Because this could have been done privately, not publicly. But you made it public, as George made it public. Thus, this is public. This is my response. So, if you have issues with me, that's up to you to talk to me. Now, you made other comments, Barbara, saying that I left or didn't want anything to do with you, or however you worded it. Again, out of context. What occurred at the time was Karen, which is T.J. Brooks, put up a video against Almighty Wind, claiming that they're using sex magic, which is bogus. Not true, unfounded, goes against everything that's in print, goes against everything else, right? Now, you said that you and your husband read a ton on this subject, right? Okay, I'm not saying you didn't, but Barbara, did you practice? I'm willing to bet you didn't. You read. You didn't practice. Now, let's assume, I'm saying assume because, like I said, I don't know these things. Let's assume that you dabbled in. Dabbling into something doesn't make you an expert at it. It's like if I went and got a manual on how to fix a car, right, like this truck, right, because I'm not really mechanically inclined. I got a manual to fix a truck, and I have no background whatsoever with mechanics, right, which is not too far from the truth. I can't sit there and tell somebody who has actually fixed trucks all their life, right, how to fix a truck. See what I'm saying? So you telling me from your point of view, from your husband's point of view, that you read all this information without actually doing, and you're talking to a person who was a practitioner and saying that they're wrong. Has all kind of levels of embarrassment to me. Because I took this given video, T.J. Brooks' Sex Magic in the Church, and I showed it to numerous Wiccans. All of them laughed. They said it was an outright line of nonsense. I'm cleaning up the words. Bogus, proven, factual, not valid, a lie. You see, TJ doesn't know anything about this. On that, I don't falter about. Actually, I praise TJ for not knowing this. That she had either the will or the fortunate nature of her track not to get ever near this. So I praise TJ for that part. But I say that she is wrong by what she did, and that video needs to come down. And I made my proofs, and I proved that TJ Magic, Sex Magic in Church is bogus. Factual. I'm not the only one that took TJ's Magic, Sex Magic in Church and showed it to other Wiccans. I happen to know other Christians that did that too. And they got the same exact result. Bogus. It's a line of nonsense. And whatever. Now, I did approach the YouTube community as far as the Wiccans, and I will tell you exactly what the Wiccan community here that I work with said. Same exact words. We do not wish to instill power into this person by giving them a vehicle for their hatred. So if you ignore somebody, it's like a kid who constantly does something, and they're just talking and mouthing off, and you just ignore them and wait for them to go away. And that's the way the Wiccan community viewed these videos, or this video. Just hate. Just another Christian proving to them, reinforcing their fears about Christians. So, no, Barbara. You and your husband are wrong. I know you say what you say with all truth and conviction in your heart. But in the truth and the reality of what is, it's not. Now, I know Sarai backed up TJ. But not for the reasons that she did was actual truth. Sarai's motivation was twofold. Actually, three, really. Sarai wants back into the cliques, right? That was one. Two, Sarai defended TJ because she's angry with me. I'll explain later. So, we'll just stay with those two. So that was really Sarai's motivation. But Sarai knows the truth as well as I do. That the whole video was a lie. I have no doubt that she knows better. So, same for you as it was for me. You should have called or PM'd me then. Not 6 months later, tossing up a video in a response to an apology to somebody else for something you said. Because I actually spoke to Sally and to Bob. Of course, Bob was doing a little test on me. I know he was. And trying to see what I would do, I think. But, yeah. As far as Sally was concerned, you attacked her husband. And like any good wife, she defended her husband. A husband would do the same for a wife. So what do you think was going to happen? Seriously. Two made one. So you attacked one, you attacked the other. And there's other comments I've heard of, but, I'm not addressing those people. I'll let the conviction of God deal with them. And I see no point in engaging them. Now, I know Sarai will sit there and say, I never married this man. Well, let me reinforce this to you. Biblical law states that if you give your word, it is so. Right? In the old days, prior to accepting all the worldly ways, when a Jewish man married a Jewish girl, it was done with a word. Will you marry me? Yes, I do. You're married. That's all it took. A word. By a word it is said, by a word it is done. Same for your salvation, same for that. And God does demand that you keep your words. In Joshua 9, it speaks of how God, before that, it speaks how God ordered the Israelites into Canaan and to kill every living soul in Canaan without reservation. Now, I know the atheists will have their points of view on this, but they're not seeing clearly. Now, there was a bunch of people, I think 4, came up to Joshua and said, we apologize for the way we looked. Our clothes was new when we left because they were in tears and rags and dirty. The bread we had with us was fresh from the oven when we left. And, all this and this and that. Saying, basically, they came a very long way to ask Joshua not to kill him. They cheated. They lied. But Joshua agreed not to destroy their city. So he had to keep his word. So he came up to the city, and when Joshua was there, they came out and said, remember us, you promised not to destroy us. And then, of course, some degree or agreement was made, but they went against what God already told them. But Joshua knew he gave his word, so he had to keep it. And later on, Saul, king of Israel, killed 7 men from the city of Gibeon. And there was a plague, I think it was famine was put on the land of Israel for 3 years because they broke their word. Because Joshua said, we will not harm anybody in your city. Saul killed 3 people from that city. So not honoring and keeping your word is a curse. It's up to God to do, not anybody else. Even to this day, even to now, I still regard Sarai as my wife. I still love her with all my heart, all my mind, and all my spirit. The only person that stands before her is Jesus Christ, Yahshua Mashiach. I'm a distant third. But I do demand having the person I love in my presence. Not all the time, but I demand them to be there at least a reasonable portion of it. Which is the whole reason for the whole fight from the first. So, you see my point I'm trying to drive to? Just because I'm mad at somebody or angry with them doesn't mean I stop loving or caring for them. Now, if you had problems or issues with Bob, maybe you should talk to him privately.